Welcome to Smart Wealth with Joshua.
Your daily stock analysis and catalysts talk. Today we're looking at Infleqtion.
If you find our talks useful, please consider subscribe, like, and comment underneath. So yesterday was one of those days on the market where if you blinked, you might have missed a pretty significant shift. We had a new player ring the bell at the NYSE, but it wasn't a standard IPO.
That's right. We're digging into Infleqtion, ticker INFQ. They officially began trading yesterday, February 17th. And while they came public through a merger, which usually makes investors a little wary these days, the details here are, well, they're surprising. This isn't just another software company or some kind of AI wrapper. This is hardware, hard tech.
And when you say hard tech, you aren't kidding. We are talking about quantum technology. Now, usually when I see quantum in a pitch deck, my brain immediately goes to science fiction, something that's maybe 20 years away, strictly for academics. But looking at the notes you've pulled together, this feels different. It feels immediate.
It is immediate. And that is the primary hook for this entire discussion. Infleqtion operates in a specific niche called neutral atom quantum technology. But the reason we're talking about them today isn't just because the physics are cool though they are, it's the numbers. They are projecting a revenue growth trajectory that is, frankly, aggressive.
Aggressive is a polite way to put it. I was looking at the projections. They're sitting at what, about $29 million in annual revenue right now?
Respectable for a startup.
But the thesis, the reason anyone would buy this stock, is that they're targeting a jump to $300 million.
In the next 3 to 5 years.
That is a 10x jump.
It is.
That's a compound annual growth rate of over 100%. I mean, you're doubling your revenue every single year. So the mission for us today is pretty clear. Is that a fantasy number? Or is the technology actually ready to scale that fast?
Right. Because you don't get to 300 million just by promising a faster computer in a decade.
You absolutely do not.
And to answer that, we have to look at the name itself. Infleqtion. It's a bit of a pun, but it's intentional. They argue they are at the literal inflection point of the industry. They believe the era of quantum as a science experiment is over, and the era of quantum as a product has begun.
Okay, so let's test that theory. Because I think a lot of people, when they hear quantum computer, they picture that giant golden chandelier-looking thing hanging from a ceiling.
Right. Usually in a Google or IBM lab, that's the classic image. Those are superconducting quantum computers. And the reason they look like that, the reason they are so massive, is because they have to be kept cold. Unimaginably cold.
Like near absolute zero.
Exactly. That gold structure is basically the world's most expensive, most powerful refrigerator.
Which makes them essentially immovable objects. You can't exactly strap a giant room-sized refrigerator to a fighter jet or put one inside a satellite.
Precisely. And that is where Infleqtion's moat begins. They use a completely different branch of physics called neutral atom quantum technology.
Okay, let's not gloss over this. Neutral atom. Break that down for us without making my eyes glaze over. How is that different from the golden chandelier?
Okay, think of it this way. In the superconducting approach, the chandelier, you're trying to manufacture fake atoms on a silicon chip. It's incredibly difficult. Every slight imperfection in the silicon creates errors. You're constantly fighting the material itself.
So you're trying to build a microscopic environment that simulates an atom, but manufacturing flaws just get in the way.
Exactly. Infleqtion takes a different route. They say, why build fake atoms when nature gave us perfect ones? They use actual atoms, specifically neutral atoms. They don't have an electrical charge, so they don't fight each other or repel each other like ions do. And instead of freezing them in a giant fridge, they trap them using lasers.
Wait, lasers holding atoms?
Imagine an egg carton made of light. You use precision lasers to create a grid of these little traps, and you drop one atom into each slot. And because these are natural atoms, every single one is identical. No manufacturing flaws because you didn't manufacture the atom. Nature did.
That's a wild concept. So you just swap the silicon chip for a cloud of atoms held in place by light.
Yes, and the killer feature. The reason the military is so interested.
I'm guessing it's not the cool lights.
You can do a lot of this at room temperature. You don't need that massive refrigerator. That means you can shrink the technology down, make it rugged. You can put it in a standard server rack.
And that brings us back to the business model. Because if you can put it in a rack, you can put it on a ship. You can put it on a plane.
Bingo. This is why they call themselves real-world ready. While competitors like IonQ or Rigetti are doing incredible science, they're often viewed as building massive mainframes for research centers. Infleqtion is trying to be the blue-collar quantum company. They want to put sensors in the field right now.
So let's look at what they're actually selling, because you don't get to 300 million in revenue just by filling promises. You've got notes here on 3 distinct business lines.
Right. Think of it as a three-legged stool. Yeah. The first leg is the one we just talked about, quantum computing. That's the heavy iron, the processing power. That represents the long-term upside, the whole solve impossible math problems aspect.
But that's not paying the electric bill today, is it?
No. The bills are being paid and will be paid by legs 2 and 3. Leg 2 is quantum radio frequency, or QRF.
Which, to me, sounds like a fancy way of saying a really good antenna.
It's a bit more than that. Think about how we detect radio signals today. We use metal antennas, right?
Right.
And physics dictates that the antenna has to be a certain size to catch a certain wavelength. If you want to catch a low frequency, you need a big, long metal stick.
Yeah, you see those on Navy ships. Huge arrays.
Quantum sensors cheat the physics. They use atoms in a tiny glass cell to detect the electric field of the radio wave directly. You can replace a massive antenna array with a tiny glass cell full of gas. And it's turnable just by changing the laser.
That sounds incredibly valuable for people who listen to signals.
Yeah.
The military.
The military loves it. It solves a massive problem for them. Spectrum clutter. There are so many signals on the modern battlefield, drones, jammers, comms, that traditional electronics get completely overwhelmed. These quantum sensors can basically pick out a whisper in a rock concert.
Okay, so that's QRF. A tunable, tiny super ear. What's the third leg of the stool?
Quantum clocks and navigation. This is arguably the most critical one for national security right now. We all rely on GPS. Your phone, your car.
But also missiles, jets, ships. And GPS is fragile.
It comes from satellites. Satellites can be shot down.
Or jammed. It happens all the time in conflict zones now.
Exactly. If you're a Navy captain and your GPS goes down, you're effectively blind. You need a backup that doesn't rely on space. You need a clock so accurate that your navigation system knows exactly where it is, just based on time and motion, without ever checking in. Infleqtion builds the timing systems that make that possible.
So when they talk about revenue lock-in in their investor deck, this is what they mean.
Precisely. Think about the procurement cycle here. If the U.S. Navy designs a new navigation system for a destroyer around Infleqtion's optical clock, they aren't going to rip it out 2 years later because a competitor is 5% cheaper.
No, that tech is welded in. It's integrated into the fire control system. It's there for 30 years.
And that creates a massive defensive moat. High switching costs. Once you win the contract, you tend to keep it. That's why that projected growth to 300 million, while aggressive, has a path to reality. It's based on government programs of record.
Okay, so the story is good. We make unjammable navigation and tiny super antennas for the military. That sells itself. But stories don't pay salaries. Let's look at the bank account. They just listed via a merger. And I have to be honest, usually when I hear merger or SPAC in 2026, I cringe. It usually means founders cashing out and leaving retail holding the bag.
And that is where the data here really surprised me. I was ready to be skeptical. I was ready to see a chart showing the founders just running for the exits. But look at the ownership structure.
I'm looking at the pie chart here. Wait, 70%?
71% to be exact. The legacy shareholders, so the founders, the scientists, the operators who actually built this tech, they kept over 70% of the company.
That is incredibly rare. Usually you see them get diluted way down, or they use the IPO liquidity to buy a private island.
Exactly. They didn't sell. They rolled their equity over. They are betting on themselves. And because of the lockup agreements, that 70% is essentially frozen for the next 6 months. It can't be dumped on the market.
That removes a lot of that immediate selling pressure you usually see. But what about cash on hand? Did they actually raise enough money to execute? Because hardware is expensive.
They walked away with $550 million in gross proceeds.
Oh, okay.
That includes cash from the trust and the private investment. And crucially, zero debt.
Zero debt is huge, especially now. It means every dollar can go into R&D, not servicing loans.
It gives them a runway of about 24 to 36 months. That is the magic window. They have 2 to 3 years to build out manufacturing and deliver on those government contracts without having to panic about raising more money.
So they have the cash, they have the tech, and the founders are all in. Why is the market sentiment so late? I'm looking at the sentiment analysis you pulled, and it's a flat line.
It's the skepticism gap. The news flow sentiment is coming in as neutral, basically a 0.
Why? Is it just sector burnout?
Part of it is sector fatigue. Investors have been burned by quantum stocks before. Remember the initial hype around some of the earlier players? The stocks popped, everyone got excited, then reality set in, delays happened, and the stocks just drifted down. The market is in show-me mode.
They don't want promises. They want purchase orders.
Exactly. And there's also the valuation aspect. The post-merger equity value is around $1.8 billion.
For a company making $29 million in revenue, that is rich.
It is. You are paying roughly 60 times current sales. That is a massive multiple. You're paying entirely for the future. You're paying for that $300 million target.
So the math is pretty binary then. If they hit the $300 million, the valuation looks cheap. If they stay at $29 million, the stock is going to get crushed.
Precisely. But this is where the opportunity lies for the investor who does their homework. Because the sentiment is neutral, because people are skeptical, the stock isn't priced for perfection yet, it's priced for maybe. If they can shift that narrative to definitely, the re-rate could be violent to the upside.
It's an asymmetric risk-reward. But we have to look at the downside. What kills this company? What's the nightmare scenario?
Execution risk. It is always execution. Scaling from making 5 bespoke sensors in a lab to making 500 on an assembly line is hell.
Hardware is hard.
It is. Ask Tesla, ask Apple. It's incredibly difficult. And if they miss a delivery date for the DoD...
They're not a forgiving customer.
No. The DoD is a slow beast, but they don't like failure. If Infleqtion misses milestones, those programs can get cut. And remember that $1.8 billion valuation is held up entirely by the belief in growth. If that growth stalls, the valuation compression will be brutal.
Plus, there's the macro risk. If the market decides it hates growth stocks again, or if there's a flight to safety, Infleqtion gets thrown out with the bathwater regardless.
It's a high beta stock. It will swing wildly.
So for the listener who's interested, who likes the sound of GPS insurance and quantum radio, what are the signposts? What should they be watching in the next 3 months?
We have a very specific calendar to watch. First up is late March. That will be their first earnings call as a public company.
The first report card.
Right. And honestly, the Q4 revenue number from last year doesn't matter that much. What matters is the guidance. We need to hear them say, yes, we are on track for our 2026 targets. If they confirm that, the stock holds. If they wobble, look out below.
So March is the test. What else?
Contracts. We're waiting for announcements. Specifically, you want to look for the words program of record.
Program of record. That sounds official. Why does that phrase matter so much?
In military speak, that means you aren't just a science experiment anymore. You are a line item in the budget. Congress has allocated money specifically for you. It's the holy grail.
So that's a massive validator. And finally, what about analyst coverage?
Yes. Now that the listing is done, the quiet period will end, and the big banks Goldman, Morgan Stanley, will start publishing research. If they initiate with buy ratings and price targets above the current level, it brings institutional money into the stock. It validates the whole story.
Okay. We've covered the tech, the war chest, the insiders, the risks. Let's boil it down. What's the final verdict?
I'm giving this a bullish score of 7.5 out of 10.
7.5. That's pretty confident for a new listing in a tough sector.
It is. But the combination of that $550 million in cash, zero debt, and the specific utility of the technology, the fact that it solves urgent problems for the military today, that tilts the scale for me. The floor is higher because the tech is real and has a customer.
But this isn't a trade for next week?
No. This is a 12 to 24-month hold. You have to let them build the factory. You have to let them deliver the sensors. You are betting on execution.
It feels like we're watching the industry grow up. For a decade, quantum has been about, look at this spooky physics. Now it's about, can you help me navigate a ship when the GPS is down?
That's the shift. We are moving from the lab coat era to the combat boot era of quantum.
Lab coats to combat boots. I like that. A good mental image to leave us with. That's a wrap for this talk on Infleqtion. If you're tracking the stock, keep an eye on that March earnings date.
And watch for the government contracts. That's the real signal.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.